If you have a digital camera, the chances are you take a lot of photos with it, and they probably don't always work out the way that you wish they did. Now, here's the good news. If you really understand how your digital camera works, you can use it to take photos that are so great that you won't believe it was you who took them. My name is Mark Hemmings, and I'm an internationally recognized photographer and photography instructor. And in this video, I'll share with you 5 little-known tricks for taking incredible photos that leave everyone speechless. Now, one tip that's going to radically enhance your portrait photography is to make use of setting sun, especially when you have rays of light shining on a wall, on a doorway, on a staircase. Position your friend or your model in the light so that his or her face is illuminated by that wonderful soft light. Now keep in mind, you're probably going to have to underexpose the picture, make it a bit darker. The reason is the camera sees so much shadow around the space that will compensate by making the picture brighter. That means that your friend's face is going to be way too bright. So to do that, you're going to use exposure compensation and go down to the minus side to make the picture a bit darker. Ultimately, exposure of the face, skin tone, has to be your priority. Don't worry about the exposure of anything else. Also, don't forget, stay low. It's always good to photograph your models when you are in a low position and they are slightly higher than the lens. This really empowers the subject and really helps to make an excellent portrait that's full of drama. Now, as for the camera mode, I usually like to use aperture priority for portraits, especially outdoor portraits. And I often use the lowest f-stop number possible. For this lens, it's an f2.8. However, because I don't really care so much about background blur, because there's nothing behind my model except a beautiful wooden door, it doesn't matter. I could use f2.8 or I could use f8. Usually you're going to choose your aperture based on how much light you have and are you using a tripod or not. I was hand holding, therefore I like to use a low aperture f-stop number in order to avoid camera shake. I hope those tips helped to give you excellent portraiture in the evening when the sun is low and extremely beautiful. A great way to get excellent photography is to use the rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds can be used in many different genres, whether it be street photography, architecture, landscapes, nature. Even posing people using the rule of thirds is very effective for portraiture. I'd like to give you an example of how I would use the rule of thirds when photographing a really interesting subject, such as this really cool door knocker. Now, the problem is, where do you place such a subject in your frame? Do you put it in the middle? Do you put it on the side? Well, let me give you an example, doing a test shot. Now, as you can see, there's a fair amount of empty space on one side, and this side occupies 2/3 of the picture space. Now, think about the main subject. It's the hand. The hand is on the vertical third of the picture space. So, whenever you're trying to figure out how to place a subject in a horizontal frame like this, try placing your subject on one of the thirds lines. My videographer is putting up a line through the hand right now just so that you can see where the perfect position for this hand should be. Now, a really great combination for street photography is actually getting an aerial perspective. That means go higher than your subject. And also isolate the person who you're photographing. Now, this works really well for a number of reasons. One is that when you're taking pictures from an aerial perspective, very few other people bother to do this. So automatically your pictures become that much more valuable. Also, when you isolate your subject, when you have a very plain and nondescript background, but just one person, that person becomes very powerful, visually speaking. I'd like to give you an example. So what I'm going to do is wait for the right person to walk into my frame. I'm actually going to view the back screen with my camera pointed out just a little bit like this. And as soon as the person comes in, I'm going to take the picture in burst mode. Now, the reason I like burst mode is I want to make sure that I get the right stride from the person walking through my frame. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, so we got the shot. The person's walking into the frame. I'm sort of still obeying rule of thirds where there's more space in front of the person than behind. And you'll notice a really neat technique that I use with my strap. If I push with my two hands against the camera, there's pressure on the back of my neck, which gives us a good, solid shot. Very much like using a tripod. Now, about settings. For this type of shot, I like aperture priority. And because I'm currently in the shadow, you may be in the direct sunlight, it really doesn't matter too much. f8 or f5.6 is probably a good average for your aperture. But what's really important, as I mentioned, is having the burst mode on, or some cameras call it sports mode or rapid fire, just so that you can get the shot. An absolutely fantastic way to compose your photos is to use what we call symmetry. Now, symmetry is a situation where the left side of the picture space is equivalent to the right side. Now, take a look at this doorway, for example. The door is symmetrical, has a nice arch, and also the two lights act as sort of foundations or anchors for our symmetrical scene. So it's the symmetrical lights and the door that provides the foundation for our photo. Now, what about the flowers? Well, they don't need to be symmetrical. In fact, that would be impossible unless there were fake flowers. But that's okay, because we have the foundation and we can lay the flowers, in a sense, onto the foundation for an overall great visual effect. Now, about settings and position. You have to be dead straight on to get a symmetrical photo to work. If I was 1 foot that way or 1 foot this way, it just wouldn't work out. Also, make sure that when you're photographing with a straight vertical line, such as the two sides of this doorway, that you are actually photographing from a position where there will be no distortion. Let me give you an example. If I was to get really low and to shoot up, we would have slight distortion on those vertical lines. Or if I was on the rooftop of the building behind the videographer right now, and if I was shooting down, we would have a distortion element which would not look good. So when I'm about to shoot this door, my consideration is I want to make sure that I am photographing at the door's midpoint with regards to height. Something like this. I'm bending down just a little bit. I'm making sure that my vertical lines look good. I take the picture and everything is perfectly straight. The left side is equivalent to the right side, and we have a very powerful symmetrical photo. Now, with regards to settings, pretty much any setting will do because we're photographing against a flat surface. So we're not concerned about depth of field. Really, all we care about is composition. Make sure that you have those lines straight. The left side is equivalent to the right side, and you're gonna have a winner. I would like to share with you an amazing technique for taking really cool pictures at night or at dusk when it's getting pretty dark out. It's called light trails, and it's a result of having a long exposure. Now, what we're going to do is make use of the light coming from the headlights of cars, of trucks, and motorcycles going under this bridge. It's going to be a really cool effect because what's going to happen is the camera is going to have a very long shutter speed, which makes the light very blurry. Now, we won't see the vehicles because of the long exposure, but we will see the light. Let me show you first what we need to do in our camera. I'd like you to switch to aperture priority. Also, I'd like to make sure that you're at your lowest ISO possible. That would be ISO 100 or in some cameras, ISO 200. Also, I want to make sure that your aperture's f-stop is at the highest number possible. For example, maybe your lens is f22 for its highest, or maybe f16 or even f32. Whatever the highest f-stop number is for your aperture, place it on that. Okay, the next thing, make sure you have a tripod. It's critical. This won't work without a tripod. You could possibly rest your camera on a solid surface. However, a tripod has a little bit more flexibility, so that's what I suggest. Now, when you're ready to take the picture, make sure you've composed it the way you wanted it and you're ready to go. Now, you don't need to worry about camera shake. You don't need to have a 10-second or 3-second timer because the picture's so long, even if you do shake the camera just a little bit, the exposure could be as much as 1 or 2 minutes long, so be prepared for a long wait. Okay, let's do a test run. I see some cars coming down now, so I'm going to take the picture. And now I'm just going to wait. Okay, it was a great success. Take a look at this picture. We have really great exposure all around. The street is exposed perfectly. We have lovely light on the sides, but what we have are streaks of light. You can't see the cars, only the light. It's a great success. Just remember, you don't have to rely on headlights. I could go on the other side of this bridge and get the red tail lights, which could even be cooler. Don't forget, anything that is moving that has bright light, you can use this technique on. It will radically enhance your photography. Have fun. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you got a lot of value out of it. Now there's so much more I'd like to tell you about digital photography. And while I didn't hold anything back, there's only so much I could share with you in a short video like this. And that's why I've recorded an entire video course about taking incredible photos with your digital camera, and finally taking your camera off of the auto mode. So if you'd like to find out more about my digital photography course, you'll find more information right under this video. So take a look at my full digital photography course, and I hope to see you there.